Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Corey, better known as the Seaman, and I want to welcome you to another edition of the Seaman's Cinema Sit Down and our first episode in my new studio space. We're still in the same apartment, but we've changed the front room, and I have a giant mirror closet doors behind the camera, so I can see everything that you guys can't see. If you do want to see everything, take a look at my short, kind of showing off and debuting the space right up there. But the other thing too is, as we do videos, I'll shoot them in different locations in this very tiny space, so we can utilize all of it, and you will get to see everything. But the fact of the matter is having it all done makes me so happy, and I am even more happy that the first movie we get to talk about in this space is a horror movie. And actually, the first two movies we'll talk about in this space are horror movies. I tried to go see Immaculate on Friday, and getting to the theater 20 minutes late, hoping to miss previews, screen wasn't even on. An hour later, they confirmed the projector's not working. They can't get it to work. There's not going to be any screenings of Immaculate because that's the only theater that was playing. And this theater really only rotates stuff out of the Prime Theater. The other theaters, wherever your movie lands, that's just the movie playing in that theater all day long. So no Immaculate screening. Then I was going to go see this movie kind of to make up for it that night. But when I got home, this desk had arrived, and I was very determined to get it built and kind of get the space solidified so I can eventually start cleaning up the other room, because, when you only have a small studio space, it's a studio apartment. So when I have the kind of space I have to clean out one space to make it nice and new and neat and cool, you got to kind of trash the other one. So I opted to build the desk, get everything kind of squared away, and then on Saturday I went for a little double dip. And we are going to first talk about the second movie I watched, because of the two, it was my favorite just by a smidge. I liked it just a little bit more than the other one. But I'm very excited to be talking about two movies that land in the horror space in a segment of the horror space that doesn't usually slap the way that these two do. What are we talking about? First, well, why don't you pull up a chair, take a seat. We are getting ready to dive in, spoiler free, into Late Night with the Devil. And dude, I said this in my immediate reaction, but it has been a long time since I've seen a possession movie that worked this well. Typically, these types of movies, very up and down. It really depends on the jump scares working and, being able to creep out your audience in a way where, you can dial it up crazy and crazy and crazier as you go through the movie. And that, I think, is usually the pitfall with these possession movies, is you get to that third act finale and it's just absolutely bonkers to a place where the scariness isn't really there anymore. Well, that, I am happy to report, is not the case with Late Night with the Devil. And I think all of that really has to do with our writing, directing duo, another pair of writing, directing brothers. You know how I love those. Cameron and Colin Cairnes, who have a really interesting and original script idea. We are following, it's kind of like a combination of things. It opens where you have somebody doing a VO and they kind of tell you the history of this late night television show, Night Owls. It was a show that aired for about 6 or 7 years. It was, trying to compete with Johnny Carson. Never quite ever reached there in the ratings. Something personally happens to its host, so he steps away for a little bit. He's been back now for a year, and he's teetering right on the edge of no longer being on television because the ratings just cannot reach Carson. But Halloween is always a big night for the show because Night Owls tries to talk to, a different segment of the nighttime crowd. He tries to do slightly weirder or as much as you're doing the typical late night things, they're, a little bit different in the vibe of some of the things that Jack is willing to kind of mess with. And when it comes to Halloween, it's one of these spots where he lines up this crazy Halloween show hoping that this will be the night that the numbers pass Carson and kind of solidify him in his late night hold, and he doesn't have to worry about no longer being on television, which is kind of where you feel Jack is. And this show, he kind of tees up where he brings on, the first guest is a medium, the second guest is a skeptic, and the third guest is a psychologist working with a girl who supposedly is possessed by a demonic entity. And Jack wants to have a commune with the devil, so to speak, on live television. That's the big thing that hopefully is going to shoot these ratings through the roof. And that concept in and of itself is super original, where like you just sit there and you're like, I've never seen a horror possession movie do the things that this movie is doing. And I think the magic trick behind what the Cairnes brothers have on the page is the fact that this movie 100% plays like a late night television episode. And that's kind of the concept. You know, like I said, you have a voiceover that kind of tells you Jack's history and, you know, Night Owl's history, and then tease up that this one episode brought some of the craziest things anyone had ever seen on live television to live television. And if you haven't seen it, we're going to show you the episode. And then in between the segments, when we're in commercial break, there's actually behind the scenes footage that was being captured. So you're able to see conversations that Jack is having with people during the break that has to do with the stuff that's going on both on screen during the show and, you know, moving past the show and happening during the break as well. And that concept pulls you in a way where you get to a place where it's like your brain starts to trick you into thinking that you're watching something that might have actually been real. Like there are moments where it's like if you didn't know who David Dastmalchian was or any of these actors were, and you were watching this, you'd be like, wait, there was a late night show in the 70s called Night Owls? Like it feels that realistic when you're watching it. And the other thing that's great is that the movie plays to true time. So when the show starts, I took out my phone, I looked at what the time was, and when you're getting close to the last segment, you're right about the hour mark. And these shows typically go between like an hour to an hour and 5-10 minutes, right? So you're right in the wheelhouse of all of this that you're watching is happening in real time. And that too brings a level of authenticity and realism to it that sucks you in, where you forget to some degree that you're watching a movie. You know, like there were moments where I got up when it was over. I'm like, I almost felt like I was sitting on my couch just leaning in toward my screen as all this stuff is happening. And because of that structure, you're able to buy a lot of what's happening. And because you're buying it so hard, it's creepy. It is scary. And all of those elements work really well because of how things are structured. And then what the Cairnes brothers are doing behind the camera, I love that, you know, it shoots and looks exactly like a late night show, right down to the type of color filters that you're using and the different video filters you're using. Like the image on the screen feels like something you'd be watching on a television if it was re-airing something from the 70s. You know, it's got that grit to it. It's got that grain. And then when you're in the breaks, they go to black and white. And you know me, I'm a sucker for black and white. Black and white can elevate so many things just because of how it can play with shadows and stuff like that. But it's also a great way for you to always visually know when you're in segment and on live TV and when you're not. And playing with all of that stuff, like I said, just builds this place that and this thing that just feels so real. And then when you're looking, like I said, even more at what the script is doing, I love how they structure the show. I love that you have a medium, and the medium, you know, has ups and downs like you think a medium might. And that plays into the skeptic who can sit there and go, none of this is, I could do what this guy does. And then when you bring on this psychologist and this little girl and the possession elements are starting to happen, it doesn't waver your skeptic at all. He's like, yeah, I know how all these things happen. Look, I can show you, yada, yada, yada. And because you have somebody who is skeptical, specifically with what he does in the third act, like there's at least 2 moments in the movie where I went, oh my God, is what I'm watching actually happening? Or is this like a trick? Like, is this something that was set up beforehand? And the fact that the movie can make you doubt what you're watching, I just think is genius. It's something that you very rarely see in possession movies. And it's, again, something that brings a level of realism to the movie that really sucks you in. And then what you get with your finale is perfect for what you have built, right? Like one of the things I think is a problem is that these movies in their third acts, a lot of times they go balls to the walls and it gets so absurd. The horror leaves the room, the tension leaves the room, the eerie creepiness leaves the room, and you're just sitting watching this like, holy shit, I can't believe I'm watching what I'm watching. And what's great about this third act is that, yes, there are things on screen where you're like, I can't necessarily believe what I'm watching. And then, like I said, the movie kind of makes you doubt whether or not you believe what you're watching. But what is happening on screen is not some drastic jump to like, oh man, let's give this huge crazy third act. Like there's crazy things in it, but it's all at a level that is very, very close to what the rest of the movie has been, where the horror and the scariness and the eeriness and the creepiness, they don't leave the room. If anything, they intensify at the end of the movie, and you are just on the edge of your seat going like, and that's the other, like, you're so invested. And so much of that, I think, has to do with, yes, the script is great and what you're getting behind the camera is fantastic, but it's really this concept of this late night show, and then the scoring. All of these types of horror movies need solid scores, and the score here plays perfectly. Like anytime there's something nice or something that's happening that seems fun, there's just this slight level of eeriness in the tone of the music right underneath what's happening, where you're like, I don't know if I 100% trust exactly what's happening. And then there is this instrument that the band is using that like you don't actually touch to make noise. It's almost like a freaking wobbly saw type stuff. That when that kicks in sometimes in the movie, another thing that kind of gives you goosebumps, and all of that stuff works wonderfully. And then the sound design, like when things start getting crazy, the sound is gonna make you do this and make you do this, and it works so well in tandem with everything else that the Cairnes brothers have built. And then you have David Dastmalchian leading his first movie ever. That's crazy for me to say out loud because this dude is so talented, but he is absolutely perfect in this role. Like, having never done a movie as a lead actor before, this being the first one makes a ton of sense. I think Dastmalchian is so good in the horror realms, and what he's able to bring to this character, Jack Delroy, it's just a lot of fun, and also like, what's really going on, right? Like there's this quality to Jack where it's really easy to fall in love with what you're getting on the screen, right? Like, he is a fantastic late night host. He's not Johnny Carson, but we all have that late night host who wasn't Letterman or Leno or Carson, you know, that you really like, that was on maybe late at night or like on at the same time, and every once in a while you jump over there and check them out instead, or you'd watch their opening and then the guest somewhere else. He feels like one of those late night hosts. He's the guy that you want to root for because he's the underdog, so to speak. And there's a really natural, nice quality to Jack where it's like you could see how this guy could survive even without having the ratings for as long as he did, because he's that good. And Dastmalchian delivers all that stuff flawlessly. I'm right down to the eerie, creepy things happening, maintaining his composure on screen like a host. He nails it. But the thing that I think is magical about his performance is watching what happens in the breaks, right? Like during the breaks, as things are slowly ramping up, there are times where you wonder if Jack should just call this whole thing off, stop the taping, stop the show, because it's live, it's not taping, so like stop all of it and just get out of Dodge, right? But his commitment and his drive to wanting to not lose his fame. That's one of the other things about the script that I love, is the Cairnes brothers really look at what a person will do for success, for fame. And the things driving Jack are so fascinating. Dastmalchian is able to play with them so well, but also is able to balance things where he can handle real conversations. He can legitimately be scared or kind of thrown off himself. Yet when that guy is, you know, back in 10 and he sits down and he looks up and those lights come on, flips right back into being Jack Delroy, the TV host. And how Dastmalchian is able to move in and out of those moments is just magical, and again, delivers a level of authenticity to what's on screen where you really buy that this might have been an episode of television of a late night show that aired in the 70s that stopped airing after this because like things got nuts. So he's absolutely brilliant and is just perfect to take us on this journey. And like I said, as someone who has a horror, you know, background, and you know, while he isn't the thing that's scaring us or creeping us out, just the way that Dastmalchian can move us in and out of those things, he never lets the creepy or the eerie or the thing that's lingering disappear, because it's lingering for him too. And all that stuff is fantastic. And then when you look at the rest of the cast, you really do have a nice collection of supporting characters and a collection of actors that I don't think lots of people will sit there and be like, oh man, I know that person, I know that person, I know that person, you know? And it starts with Rhys Auteri, who plays Jack's number 2, Gus McConnell. He's the band lead. And Rhys does a phenomenal job too. Like, he is the perfect counter to Jack. They balance each other out just the way you would want a pair to do on a late night show. And then he's somebody who respects the reality of the situation. When things are starting to get weird, he starts getting more hesitant, and he's kind of speaking for the rest of the crew, like, hey, Jack, people are kind of starting to think that maybe we should stop doing what we're doing. And having that level of skepticism to continuing the show because you believe the reality of what's happening is a quality that I really like about Gus. And then he kind of plays in to what's going on in the third act, and specifically something that the skeptic is able to do that kind of makes us start to doubt whether or not what we've been watching is actually what's happening. And the way he responds to those things, again, a level of realism where you feel like this guy is really experiencing these things, and they're things that you can mesh with. And I just thought Reese knocked that stuff out of the ballpark. Then you have your first guest, Faisal Bazi, who plays this character Christu. Christu is a medium, and I loved him, man. He gets you some laughs because, not everything mediums do always work. They're the senses and the connection, can kind of be up and down. But when he finally does lock in, he sells it really, really well. And then on top of that, there are some things that start happening with Christu during the course of the movie where you need someone who's going to give you 100% commitment, and Bazi just leans full in and gives you the energy and just like he exhausts you almost in some ways when you start watching what's going on. And again, there's a level of realism to his performance where you're like, man, like you're feeling for this guy, you're pulling for this guy, like when certain things are happening, especially when you have a skeptic on stage. And that skeptic, played by Ian Bliss, is a wonderful counter to everything supernatural going on in the movie. And Ian Bliss plays Carmichael Haig, and Haig, is someone who just doesn't buy this stuff, the supernatural, the spiritual. He doesn't think any of these things are real. And Christu does stuff, and he pokes holes in what Christu is doing. But then you see things, and you're like, are your holes real? And then you see, afterwards when we get the doctor and this little girl out, he does the same thing and produces a level of doubt for the audience, where, like I said, you're kind of like, oh man, wait, are we actually seeing what we're seeing? Like, is this something that we should be, what's actually happening here? And Haig's just authenticity and his resolute, nature to not believing in these things produces doubt. And that's what you want from that character. And I think Bliss nails that stuff. And he has a tremendous moment in the third act. So freaking good. And then your last guests, June Ross Mitchell and Lily, played by Laura Gordon and Ingrid Torelli. I thought Gordon was great. She has a really motherly quality to her. She knows Jack, so what's going on in that storyline is kind of interesting. And again, when you start to get those doubts, plays into what you're thinking about what might be going on and what is Jack and June really up to. But there's also, again, a level of authenticity to her where you believe what she's saying and the way she cares for this girl, like it's almost familial. And I appreciated all of that stuff because, again, it pulls you in a way where it's like you're concerned about these two people, but you're also fascinated because Ross Mitchell believes what she is doing so much. And then Ingrid Torelli, like what you get from her, she is so cute. Like she's just an adorable little girl. But everything she does, and the scoring does this too, right? Like we were saying, like the score can kind of have like nice things, but there's this level of eeriness underneath. Everything that Torelli does, when it's super sweet, when it's innocent, there's also this level of like, there's something evil also kind of going on here. And when the possession stuff starts kicking in, again, this is a little girl that fully commits, and the makeup and the things that they kind of provide to elevate that whole sequence hit like nail right on the head. And like I said, it never goes to the loony bin. Like you never get to these really outlandish things that don't feel tangible. And when you have actors playing characters that feel as real and authentic as these characters, you're able to kind of go on this journey and buy the things that are happening. And because the third act, while it'll get kind of nuts, never gets too far away from where we start, it creates a really real feeling of fear and just a level of uncomfortableness the entire time you're watching this slow downward spiral. And I loved every second of this. So let's get the Sea Maniacs up. Like I said, I think our directors here, Colin and Cameron Cairnes, deliver a really original, interesting concept that suck you in a way that makes it feel real. The late night television angle was new and fresh to this type of story in a way where like I was locked in start to finish. I love how they, operate between live segments and, commercial breaks with the visuals of being in color and black and white, the scoring, the sound design, all great stuff. And then just committed performances across the board, specifically from David Dastmalchian, who, for the first time in his career, leads the living hell out of a movie. I loved Late Night with the Devil. I'm going 4 out of 5 C-Maniacs. This was damn near perfect, and I was just so happy. Like, it finished off my double dip in a very, very positive way. So there you go, man. That's all the C-Man's got to say about Late Night with the Devil. Now it's your turn. First and foremost, as always, if you're a horror fan, how big of a horror fan are you? Do you like these types of possession type movies? And have you felt like you haven't seen a possession movie really hit the mark in a while? And did Late Night with the Devil hit that mark for you? And if it hit that mark, what was it about it that made it work so well? Was it the originality? Was it the realistic vibe to everything that's going on? Was it the scares? Was it the build, the acting, the score? Anything you got there. And if you haven't seen the movie, would you see the movie? Is this something that kind of speaks to you? Are you willing? Maybe you're a little skeptical of possession movies. Have we convinced you to maybe give this one a go? I really think if you were a horror fan, you like these types of movies, you're going to walk in, get something that you haven't seen before, even though it's something you've seen 100 times, and walk out going, that was a damn good movie. So anything you got, man, good, bad, indifferent on Late Night with the Devil, put it down below in the comments section. I look forward to talking to you down there. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you're new, you want to come hang out with the C-Man anytime we're talking movies, TV, trailer, reactions, you want to be here to see my thoughts on Immaculate or just anything else we're working on, you want to show a little love and support because you dig the vibe and you haven't yet, well, hey, come join C-Maniac Nation. Super easy. Jump over there, hit that subscribe button, hit that little bell if you want those alerts. And until next time, for the C-Man's Cinema Sit Down, I've been the C-Man. I'm signing off. Peace. Hey, what's up, C-Maniac Nation? Winter Ken here, where we grow out our roots and our beard, letting you know that you can see some new C-Man videos right up here and right down here. And if you want all those videos and show that man a little love and support, come join C-Maniac Nation right over there, and the C-Man will catch you on the next one.